So I was digging around in a box of old junk cameras I have the other day, and I ran across this lens. I kind of knew I had it, but I thought it was in worse shape than it was, and so I hadn't really pursued getting it out. We're looking at today is a 58mm f2 Carl Zeiss Biotar. Now this is a really unique lens. You know, it has this little wing sticking out here. This was made for an Exacta camera, which is kind of a unique camera. So we're going to talk about this lens, talk about the Biotar and what why it's so popular, and then we're going to take some pictures with it. So let's get started. The Carl Zeiss Biotar, 58mm f2 Biotar, was a pretty revolutionary lens in its day. This lens at f2 was pretty amazing. I mean, 1936, fast lenses were not very common. Most of your lenses had pretty slow maximum apertures, and to create one that was f2, that was a pretty big deal. Actually, the cine version, the movie camera version of this was, I think, f1.4. It was even faster. So in 1936, that was a pretty big deal, and this lens was first designed to be used with the Kini Exacta, and that's what this lens is mounted for, is Exacta. Later on, after World War II, Zeiss came out with the Contax S, and it also introduced the M42 mount, which is now has been used by a lot of companies, and the Biotar was made in that. And it's very common in that mounting. Now, like I say, this lens, it was in a box of old junk cameras, and I have actually a couple different Exacta bodies, and neither one of them function. They both need to be cleaned and lubed. And this lens, the filter ring was pretty dented on it, and I had to straighten it out. And kind of interesting in doing that, I was reminded of some history of this lens. So this lens was made between 1953 and 1960, and probably more towards the beginning of that time. I'm not sure the timing exactly, but you know, after World War II, the Carl Zeiss Jena factory became part of East Germany. And Zeiss in West Germany, they had their own company, and they were known as Zeiss Opton. And Zeiss Opton, this is a Zeiss Opton lens. A Zeiss Opton lens actually says, see if you can read it, right there at the top it says Zeiss Opton. And you notice it's got the T for the coating, the T-star coating, or not T-star, but just T coating. And so there was some dispute about who could use the Carl Zeiss name, and so there were different disagreements, and I'm sure some lawsuits, and so they finally came to settle on some possible solutions. So when I took this lens apart, there was a decorative ring on top of another decorative ring, right? So this one just says CZ Jena, right? And it does not have the T for the coating. It does have the little zero with I guess it's not a zero, but it's a little mark there that's supposed to be a quality. It's a Q, I guess it is, with a kind of a line through it. But it's supposed to be a quality indication that this is a top quality lens. But the underneath it is this one that says Carl Zeiss Jena. So this lens with this ring added to it was made to be exported out of East Germany to other countries. And Carl Zeiss in West Germany insisted that they not use the Carl Zeiss name to export. They could sell it in country, but to export they had to change it. So this was added to this lens to make it exportable. And the original decorative ring actually says Carl Zeiss Jena, and it's got the T for the T coating. We'll talk about that in a second. And they're different serial numbers completely. So this is a 4129506, and this is a 4837328. They're like completely different. Kind of a funny thing. It's just kind of a rare artifact from that time in our world history. But the Carl Zeiss factory in East Germany made a number of different cameras and lenses, and then Carl Zeiss in West Germany made cameras and lenses, and there was obviously some dispute between them. So this lens Actually, like I say, it was in better shape than I thought it would be. The glass it's got some cleaning marks, but overall it's in pretty decent shape. And the filter ring was dented, but I have a tool for straightening that out, and so I straightened out the filter ring so I can actually put, you know, a filter hood on it. And so, like I said, this lens was made between 1950 and 1953 and 1960. It has 10 aperture blades and stops down to f/16. It'll focus as close as a little less than half a meter, or like 1.6 feet, 1.65 feet, and 49 millimeter filter mount. And this version that has the T coating and then the semi-automatic aperture is one of the last versions of this. Is said to be the sharpest, and has the best color, apparently because of the coating, but maybe doesn't have quite as good a bokeh or background effect as some of the earlier versions. Kind of like the Helios, which is a copy of the Biotar, the Helios 44. There's various versions of it, and some are more desirable than others. So this lens, like I say, the semi-automatic. Photography today is so much easier. So you have an aperture ring. Let me turn it here where you can see it. And you can see, you know, I've got it set at f8 here. And there's a cocking lever. You cock the lens here. Now, on the Exacta camera, when this is mounted on the camera, this little thing is like at about 2 o'clock, and the button on the camera is right behind it. It's on the front of the camera. And so when you press the button, it fires that cocking thing, and it stops the lens down, and then it fires the camera. So with each time you take a picture, you have to wind your camera, you have to cock your lens, and then, you know, get everything focused and composed and aperture set, and then you can take a picture and it stops down. So semi-automatic aperture, kind of cool. The only thing really not working well on this lens, the focus is buttery smooth, but the aperture is kind of stiff. You actually have to push this ring in. You can see it kind of spring loaded there, and then you can turn this, but it's kind of stiff. However, I'm going to be shooting this mainly at f2 to 2.8. There's actually a half stop between f2 and 2.8, so that would be, I don't know, what, 2.4? 2.3? I don't know, but there's a half stop in between 2 and 2.8. And because this only has 10 aperture blades, when it starts to stop down, you can see that the circle that the aperture creates is not perfectly round. So at some level, as you stop this thing down, your background highlights start getting that kind of, well, in this case, it'll be 10-sided kind of look, because the aperture blades aren't really that curved. So anyway, we're going to take this out and shoot some pictures with it. It should be kind of fun. I'm going to put it on an adapter I have. If you run across these old Exacta lenses, sometimes you can buy them pretty inexpensively because most people don't really know what to do with them. And I don't guess there's Exacta mounts for every camera out there, but there are for Micro Four Thirds. This is a one I found on eBay. It doesn't even have a brand name on it, but it was like $10 or $12. And just like the front of the Exacta has, there's a release lever here for the lens, and there's a pin right here on the lens that locks into it. So you put this on and turn it. Yeah, you got to do it the right way. You can actually put this on the wrong spot, and it locks on. You have to be kind of careful because this is pretty easy to press, and then the lens will come loose. So as you're using it, you kind of have to keep that in mind. I'm gonna put this on my EM5 Mark II, and you can see this. I'm not gonna use this aperture mechanism thing. I'm just going to shoot the lens primarily wide open, so I won't have to worry about that. It's kind of weird sticking out there, but also I'm going to just make the image quality a little bit better. I'm going to put it on a 49mm lens hood. This is just an old vintage hood from, I don't know, that was in all my junk stuff. That'll kind of help. And we're going to get out and take some pictures with it. And kind of cloudy this morning. I'm at a park here in Oklahoma City. It's got a lot of flowers and foliage, and so Riley and I are going to go out and take some pictures, and Riley's going to see if he can find something to chase, squirrels or other dogs or something, and then we'll come back and we'll have some pictures to look at. Okay, that was a lot of fun. It's starting to get kind of steamy hot out there. 58mm Carl Zeiss Biotar. Look at some of the images in the camera. I'm really excited. Can't wait to get these in the computer and look at them. The colors are really vibrant. I really am impressed with the color rendition of this lens. I didn't really run across a situation. There's kind of like a best distance in order to get like the swirly bokeh effect. And as I understand it, and I'm not a big fan of bokeh stuff, but if you are, I understand that being a couple feet from the subject and maybe the highlighted background, maybe 15 feet back, gives you maximum effect. And of course, I'm shooting micro four thirds versus full frame, so some of that swirly stuff is probably out of the image anyway. But I'm able to get beautiful, creamy, soft backgrounds, especially when I'm focused up close. The colors are just beautiful, and there's almost kind of like even though the images are sharp, there's almost a kind of an ethereal kind of glow around things that's really attractive. I can't believe I left this lens sitting in a box of old junk cameras for so long. I'm gonna have some fun with this lens. I really enjoyed using it. Riley enjoyed trying to chase other dogs in the park. A couple of ducks he would have gone after if I hadn't stopped him. So some of these pictures, I think there's a couple of pictures like of one of the ducks. I actually stopped down the lens to f8. You can see there's more depth of field. The lens is beautifully sharp, especially when you stop it down. But even at f2 and 2.8, which is where I took most of the pictures, sometimes I stop down to 2.8 just to get just a tiny bit more depth, field in the image, which is just a tiny bit amount, but sometimes a little bit helps. And so most of the images are shot at 2 or 2.8. I'm just really impressed with the image qualities. I think this is going to be a fun lens. I may have to think about an extension tube so I can extend this just a tiny bit if I want to get closer. Not really to use it as a macro lens, but kind of get kind of close but still have the image qualities of this lens. So pretty clear why a lot of people rave about the Biotar and its image qualities, and I'm sure the Biotars are a little harder to find than the Helios 44. I think the 44-2 is probably the one that's most highly sought after. Those are pretty inexpensive. I noticed the Biotars on eBay are kind of pricey. A lot of them are going well over $100, and one that's in really mint condition could go over $2. And so they're really highly sought after. I was really lucky to have this one in it, literally a box of old junk cameras. And so I'm really glad to have it, and I think it's going to be a lot of fun. Like I say, if you can't, find a good path to one of these, the Biotars, the Helios, I think, has much the same properties. I know they're extraordinarily popular right now. Consequently, that's driven the prices up a little bit, but they're not anywhere close to the price of a Biotar. So anyway, the Carl Zeiss Jena 58mm Biotar, pretty cool lens. I'm going to have some fun with this one. Well, I hope you enjoyed seeing some of that. The pictures were a lot of fun to take. If you have any thoughts or questions, please don't hesitate to leave me a comment. I always love hearing from you. And as always, thanks for watching. Say goodbye, Riley. Can you say goodbye?